The table of the Grand Marshal was set up on this footing. Officers of the household had to go a notch lower, and they were distributed between four different tables. Five of the governess of the children of France was appointed. The table of Lady of Honor, over which Madame de la Rochefoucauld ought to have presided, but which she did as seldom as possible, was meant to provide for the persons in attendance on the Empress. But the ladies of the palace avoided the duty, and as they were free at 5 o'clock, were in a hurry to return home to make some pretense of rest, for they had to be back at the palace in full dress at the stroke of 7. The officers in attendance on the Empress dined at the table known as that of the officers of the household, over which presided a grand officer of the crown, or in his absence, the first prefect of the palace. These two tables were each calculated for 15 persons on ordinary occasions, and at dinner there were served 2 soups, beef, 2 removes, 6 entrees, 2 roasts, 6 entremets, and 4 hors d'oeuvres, 2 salads, and a dessert of 16 dishes. Still lower was the table known as that of the officers of the guard, at which the orderly officers, the officers of the guard, the pages on duty, and the grooms of the chambers took their meals. Then came the table of His Majesty's secretaries, laid only for 4 places, to which no one could be admitted who was not employed in the cabinet. The secretaries, besides, led, as we have seen, quite a separate existence, and although they possessed the entrees, never appeared in the salons. The orderly officers equally did not appear, and in their intermediate position were not considered as part of the service. From 1806, during the very few winters which the emperor passed in Paris, there was an assembly every other day. On the other days the emperor only asked for the entrees. The 2 ladies of the palace remained tete-a-tete in the drawing-room. There were some who became furious and went away and became ill when Napoleon, who had noticed their giddiness, asked for the service. As far as he was concerned, there was in no respect premeditated. It was simple inadvertence, but in courts everything is a matter of suspicion and an expected distinction, which is not obtained, becomes a matter of offense. At the assemblies, the company was a little larger, but very little. As a matter of right, or almost so, the guests were first the princes and princesses, the imperial family, then the grand officers of the crown, the colonels general of the guard, emperor's aide-de-camp, the prefect of the palace, the chamberlain, and the equerries of ordinary and extraordinary service, the lady of honor, the lady of the bedchamber, the ladies of the palace on quarterly duty, then, according to the days and by special invitation, a grand dignitary, 2 or 3 ministers, a few senators, and councillors of state, 8 or 10 generals or colonels, 30 to 40 men, 20 to 30 ladies, who were always taken from among the wives of the chamberlains, aides-de-camp, or grand officers, now and then, but rarely, wives of generals, still more seldom strangers. When there was an assembly without any theatrical performance, the emperor remained in the apartments on the ground floor, the apartments of the empress. Things went on much as on ordinary days. Josephine, after a few courtesies to one and another, set to at backgammon, at which she played with marvelous skill, and summoned as partners some grand dignitary, or in his absence one of the chamberlains, or her gentleman of honor. At other times it was whist, especially on the days of assemblies, but whist amused her less, and it was rather from complacence than pleasure that she took a hand at cards. Besides, at the Tuileries, they never played for money, as markers' counters were thrown to the table, counters specially designed by Denon and engraved by Guérard, with representations of good and bad fortune. Napoleon now and then sat down at one of these tables and called one of his sisters or some lady of the palace to make up his party, or rather to talk. In the second salon, the other ladies played at lotto. There was but little conversation. The men standing around wished to have the air of being interested, did not chat, but confined themselves to the exchange of a low voice of some everyday remark. Napoleon often, without touching cards, went up to the ladies who, standing up, awaited his good pleasure. He chatted an instant with the most intimate, or rather spoke to them told them how the toilette they were wearing suited them, or amused himself by putting questions to them. But as soon as he became emperor, there was an end to those friendly evenings which he enjoyed at Masson, an end of charades, reading aloud, short stories related by each in turn. Musicians called in to play some melancholy piece in the semi-obscurity of the lights, veiled with gauze, and end of the games of 21, in which the first consul, keeping the bank, laughed at his own cheating and rallied the losers. An end of those flights of rough gaiety with men, all of whom, as his companions in arms, had to that time kept up not the tone of courtiers, but the privilege of true friends. And end still more, and forever, the chats with some lady whom he had known when he was quite a child, and whom it pleased him to tease. Now he's emperor. He has a court, and in his, as in every other, dullness reigns more than he does himself. Most frequently, even on the days of reception, when there was no absolute obligation for him to remain, or when he did not at once find someone to talk to quite to his taste, after a few turns in the salon, he went upstairs again to set to work, unless he went to some theater out of doors with the Empress, a thing which rarely happened from time to time when the Theatre of the Tuileries was constructed, or unless there was a performance in the large hall of the Tuileries, or in the small apartment, or a concert in the hall of the Marshals, or a small concert in the Empress's room. As for diversions, the latter was the only one which was acceptable to him. Music, and especially vocal music, enchanted him.